Hey, welcome everybody. I'm your host, Dr. Haig, John, at the Synapse Philosophy Group. And we have Alan Lichter here tonight, and we are going to do some reading. D.D. Palmer's chapter, it's Vertebral Luxations, page 30, 1914, The Chiropractor, written by D.D. Palmer. And, it's such a great book. It's one of my favorites of all time. This chapter is a quick one. It's 2 pages. We're going to go through it. I'm going to start reading, and then Alan, if you don't mind, if we read as well. All right. So I'm going to begin. Vertebral luxations. In pathology, luxation and dislocation mean one and the same. A luxation is a displacement, not misalignment. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Of 2 or more bones whose articular surfaces have lost, wholly or in part, their natural connection. Now, I think he put in there not misalignment because of BJ. Because BJ was talking about misalignments, okay, of the vertebra causing subluxation. And I feel he put that in there very specifically for BJ Palmer. What do you think?
It's splitting hairs between displacement and misalignment.
I don't know. I
But you're
think
probably right. Yeah, he
he's
probably did because of BJ's commentaries. Yeah.
splitting hairs is important because he wants to be very specific with his child of chiropractic and wants our vocabulary specific. And we know that from 1910 from the Chiropractor's adjuster, right? Anybody have any other discussion on that, or I'll keep moving?
But and it's interesting because does that play back to uh, uh, pinch versus impinge
Oh,
in
I
some way?
absolutely, mental impulse, what BJ said, and a vital force of what Didi said. And Didi didn't like mental impulse, and he talked about that all throughout this book. He mentioned it a couple times. All right, I'm going to read this next paragraph.
Yeah.
Pathologists give 2 causes for luxations, one known and the other unknown. It's very familiar. The known is caused by accidental luxations, owe their existence to external violence. The unknown to spontaneous luxation, those which owe their displacement to disease condition of the joint, including the vertebra, known as tuberculosis. The bones and joints are including the vertebra. And joints are affected with stromous arthritis, indolent ulcers, or that of white swelling gelatinous arthritis. All these sound absolutely horrible. Hold on. Arthritis attended with slight continued fever. The cause of morbidity is obscure, therefore said to occur of itself without any manifest external cause. What do you think all that, that's like a quote from a medical dictionary of the time of some sort, wouldn't you say?
Well, he's talking about symptoms that he sees, I think, and that
There's modern language for all of what he's saying right now, and we're just not in the times of it right now.
well, what he's saying is that we see things that cause luxations that are external violence, outside in forces
Yeah.
that cause a problem.
And
And
then the
unknown,
efferent,
spontaneous, the spontaneous unknown are what forces are within the body that
yeah.
that innate can't resist
We've talked about this a lot of times on
or
here.
it can't adapt appropriately.
Well,
And that then becomes symptomatic with this whole list of symptoms of
yeah.
we don't know where they come from.
Well, we
We
do.
know that there's a nerve issue that's a bony misalignment that's involved that
Alan.
is contributing.
Yeah. Well, what we're talking about is from the outside or from the inside. You get
Yeah.
hit by a bus, you're subluxated, right? But you torture your organs with too much sugar, and it's coming from within, right? So, that's what we're talking about. The organs, most of the subluxations come from within us. And it's not always from external forces. It's the organ itself speaking back to us. So diseases are said to be, oh, we said that one.
No,
No, here, no,
that's where we are.
diseases are said to be spontaneous, which have no apparent cause, occurring without any external influence. For example, intrauterine amputation, congenital dislocation, and fractures. As fast as the cause has become known, they are taken out of the list of spontaneous abnormalities. Chiropractic has greatly lessened this list. Luxations are complete when the bones have entirely lost their natural connection. Incomplete when they partly retain it, and compound when a wound communicates with the displaced joint. Huh.
This actually partially clarifies some of the other, because what he's saying here is clearly we have to remember we're talking about luxations here, not subluxations. We're talking about complete displacements here, as opposed to something that is not as radical. And that's why clearly, like you say, you get hit by a bus, you're probably going to have a luxation. You're probably have a complete dislocation of something that's severe. The luxation is complete when the bones are entirely lost their natural connection. Incomplete, they partly retain it, and so he's talking about complete and incomplete here, so luxation, and saying that and as we start to deal with people chiropractically, some of these things that were previously thought to have no cause, known cause, we now say we know where it's coming from.
Well, we know it's afferent and efferent, right? It's mostly comes from the organs. 80% of the time it's coming from within. And that there was, I was talking to some other professor about that. It was really interesting. And KD, that's on here, and whomever joins in, remember, this is a discussion. We can talk about this stuff all day long, but we'd like to know if you want clarity, or I'd really like to hear your input. And I've been doing this with Alan for a couple of years. I know what this guy's going to say. I'm just picking on you, but we want to hear from you. This
And
is
we'd
this
love to
is
see
what
your
we
smiling face if
do.
you're not that as well, if you like.
Pardon?
I said, and we'd love to see your smiling face as well, but if you want to remain anonymous face wise, that's fine too. But please speak up.
Yeah, I didn't do my hair today. I wasn't going to go and be on video. I'm going to read this next paragraph. Okay. The vertebral column has four normal curves. The
Did you
cervical.
did you read the
Oh,
chiropractors are
yeah,
concerned
this
with
is the
the
important one.
incomplete
This ties it all
luxations?
together. Chiropractors are concerned with the incomplete luxations, articular surfaces slightly displaced, and the relative positions they occupy towards each other. And that's really a description of a subluxation, less than a full luxation. Okay? And I think that's extremely important to realize, because we get caught up in this lack consciousness and say less light expression. And I'm absolutely, past that in reality, because you can never have less God in your body. There's never less. It's always, this is a less than a full luxation. I like to say, and Pasquale Sarasoli helped me realize this, it's under, a sub also has a definition of under the expression of the light, which I truly prefer. And to me, that fills my heart with more joy than less light, truly. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading. How about that? I'm on fire tonight. I'm going to tell you why. I had the best pizza I have had in 5 years. Okay. Since the last time I was in Brooklyn, and we all went out for a fantastic pie. I searched around for, and I have a decent pizza here. And there's a pizza shop. My CA, she was one of my favorite people, and she gives me the menu, and I said, "All right, I'll order a new pizza." Amazing. And I got to eat it before I brought it home to my kids. I'm eating in the car. It was so delicious. Okay, so I'm in a really good mood, having a great pizza tonight. All right. The vertebral column has four curvatures, four normal curvatures. The cervical lumbar bend anterior, when the dorsal and the sacral have their curvatures posterior. A lordosis is an angular curvature of the cervical or lumbar portions of the spine. The kyphosis, oh, he just, Katie, I know you're a student just here to listen, but we want to hear from students. We have a lot of students on here from around the world too, and getting some philosophy and listening, also getting questions is important too. A kyphosis is an angular curvature of the dorsal portion of the spine. Now we're getting into Dee Dee's more teaching segments here, okay? The sacral curvature being fixed and permanent owing to the vertebra being fused. Scoliosis is a lateral curvature, an abnormal curvature consisting of a sudden angular break, an increase in the convexity of the normal bend, a separation of the articular surfaces of two adjoining vertebrae, the superior articular process of one or both sides being driven or drawn backward and away from its mate. Displacements cause a stretch condition of the spinal nerves or some one or more of the branches, or the sympathetic ganglionated vertebral sympathetic ganglionated vertebral cords. A displacement of the 12th dorsal, the parentheses, the spinous process of which is displaced anterior of the axial line of the vertebral column, end parentheses, uh, not only affect certain organs and portions of the body because of excess tension created, but also a portion or all of the spinal column through excessive heat, softening the vertebra, causing anterior, posterior, and lateral curvatures. That's a long sentence with a lot of commas. Owing to the portion of the vertebral bodies flattened and narrow. I'm going to take a break, and because there's finally a period, and he is teaching and he's giving us some ideas of spinal anatomy, which is awesome. And I just need to breathe a minute because he doesn't put many, just like BJ. All right. As displacement of the 12th dorsal caused dysnormal curvature, replacing it in its normal position will restore the vertebral column to its normal curve. I have, in 26 years, only met one exception to the above-mentioned abnormal curvature, that of Miss Pearl Weeks, which was returned to normal by adjusting the 12th dorsal, the rule holding good even in reverse scoliosis and lordosis. Any angular curvature displacement of a spinous process posterior by the racking of a vertebra from its normal alignment can be replayed by hand using the spinous process as a lever. All right.
Replaced by hand. I think that's a typo there, but yeah.
Yeah, that says replayed, doesn't it? It's a typo. Okay. So is he saying, I mean, I've adjusted a lot of scoliosis and probably a lot of 12th vertebra. I mean, that's one of the vertebrae I seem to comes up a lot. They didn't all straighten out.
That's not our job.
Dee, huh?
That's our job is not
Dee.
to make them straight.
Nope.
Our
No,
our
it's
job
not.
is to find the interference and let innate work, let the body do its job to heal as best it can. There's always limitations of time and matter that can be involved. the and that's something we always have to remember. And we have to remember some of what he says here is, some of the science and some of the medical knowledge here has been expanded on since he wrote some of this stuff in 1910, 1914.
One of my teachers, Dr. Keith, oh, what was his last name? I can't believe it just spaced me. He's such a great guy. Well, he wrote a book. He was my toggle teacher in at Life. And Bailey, Dr. Keith Bailey, that's it.
Mm.
And he used to drive from Nashville to Life and stay a couple of days and drive back just to teach us. He retired. He's the one that taught me you got to get a rock table, and that's the one to do, whatever. Huge volume practice in Nashville. But he wrote a book and he had me proofread it once. And he was talking about the science. It's the science of now. right? You realize they keep proving chiropractic in science that does neuroscience all the time. Using that science of now, we don't need to constantly reprove chiropractic, right? I mean, it's everyone else proved it for us. We just have
Continually
anecdotal
validates us.
experience. Go ahead, Alan.
No, science continues to validate us. It was something I was just trying if I could find it. That Simon Sinzon just posted something a few days ago that about something that some new science that like again go. I don't remember what it was exactly, but
Doesn't matter. But
I
that's exactly
commented
it.
and
We've
said,
got the
I love
science.
when science validates and confirms what we already know.
It's already done. You know, we know it. We know it. Um, I'm going to read this next paragraph, okay? There are three forms of abnormal spinal curvature, each of which has different cause. The angular curvature consists of a break, a separation of the articular process between two vertebrae. A curvature known as Pott's disease carries of the spine, supposed to be by pathologists to be tuberculosis origin. The curvature, which has no knuckle, no sharp break, nor vertebral caries, but an increased curvature in the cervical, dorsal, and lumbar, or in both latter two, from the vertebra becoming wedge-shaped. Okay. Displaced vertebra by impinging or stretching, causing contraction of the nerve tissue. Tension is the condition of being stretched. Tension, more or less than normal, causes an increase or decrease in vibration, which means a greater or less force on impulse and corresponding amount of heat. And now they have shown that it is nerve tension is the most valid perception of what a subluxation is, not a pinch. And that's what Dee Dee said always from the beginning. It's nerve tension. And a lot of the neuroscience now is really going to that's exactly what it really is. When a vertebra is displaced, we're looking at it more like a pulley and opening that or stretching that nerve out, which I think is really, really interesting. So, nerve contraction increases vibration, irritation, and heat. The force of an impulse is augmented by greater speed in transit. The bounding back of an impulse is known as reflex action. The greater the resistance, the bounding back, the greater its energy aroused as expressed in the performance of function. Now, that reminds me of toggle,
I'm
right?
just going to say, yeah.
It reminds me of toggle because I think if the system's more under tension, it needs a lot less force, and people think that it needs more force, it needs less force because your rebound is so much more because it's under so much tension, right? If you think about a very tense high wire, it doesn't take much to have a lot of energy back. If it's very lax, that's a whole other story. Sometimes it might take a little more of extension and a little bit more speed, not always force though. And but when there is a lot of tension, you feel it today. I tell you, people have so much more tension around their necks, the upper cervical, the jaw. They're clenching their teeth at night. I'm seeing it now, like even just this year, more than ever, even all through COVID.
Sympathetics are firing like crazy.
It's like firing like crazy right now. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And but my adjusting is getting gentler. That's what I'm noticing. I don't have to use as much output. I think that's the easiest way to describe that. Would you say?
Yeah, I did. I used toggle. I actually was lucky enough to take at least one. My first chiropractor was a DNFT practitioner, and had learned directional non-force technique, KD. In case you're not aware of that, um, and actually he had studied with and learned from Dr. Van Rumpt, and I was lucky enough to take one seminar with Van the Innate Man Van Rumpt, the developer of DNFT. So I used DNFT, and then I used a lot of activator and torque release as I went forward, and very light force work. A lot of it. I mean, I also I was certified by Clay Thompson himself in
Oh,
his
wow.
drop technique. But and I had a drop table in my office, and I would use it. You have to learn to use what works, what needs to happen for the individual at that moment.
Now I've stopped using the drops. I can feel that adjustment so much more. Do the same thing, and we can do even just with almost your intention without the drop. It's just an amazing transformation because, like I said, people are in so much more tension. It doesn't need more force to change it. It's actually a lighter force, and you have a greater outcome. It's
Well, the purpose of the drop was originally designed to make a lighter force. You're supposed to set the table so a small amount of force sets the drop and the body in motion remains in motion. That was the principle that
oh yeah,
Clay worked on. And
yeah.
that was the ideal, and that's why he developed that.
Well, people use it too hard. Same thing with an
Oh
activator.
God, yes.
I use
And how
activators
light can
as
you go?
as,
Do
as
you think you
pogo
can go
sticks.
light and you go really light on a toggle or a thumb thrust, and that headpiece drops, and it's a remarkable,
Oh
you're gonna,
yeah.
how did I put enough force in to make that thing go?
One thing I see everybody doing like full spine with an activator, and they're punching this thing like it's a they're trying to cut through concrete, and it's like please, I prefer not it being used on me anyway. I don't like mechanical things on me, but it's crazy how people. I don't know if they teach it that way. Maybe they change the way they
No,
teach.
it's just like any other technique. You learn technique and you learn the rules, and then
They
you
screw
have
it
to
up.
learn how to make it work.
Yeah, that's it. Then you
Then
learn
you
how
have to
to make it work.
learn the principles of it, and then you learn how it really works and use it appropriately. Uh, and you learn the pieces. That's like I said, I used a conglomerate. I used my technique was a combination of a whole bunch of techniques that I learned over time. Applied what
Well,
I thought was appropriate, what I felt, what Nate was telling me was appropriate for that person at that moment.
Alan, on that note, I'm announcing our next seminars. We don't have a date yet, but we're going to be in New York City, innate adjusting, but it's innate baby. And we're going to do that through the whole day. The first part of the day is going to be open for lay people, and we're teaching anchor release, which is part of innate baby adjusting. And the chiropractors will stay after. We'll stay for the afternoon. The morning will be for everybody. This is a new way we're doing it because, people need some self-care too. And it's not subluxation adjusting. What it is bringing the system into ease. So it's a new approach to get people out of fight or flight. And so it's a shifting of the consciousness and vibration. So bringing people out of fight or flight, it's something we've got to really work on. So I've made half my seminar, getting the chiropractors out of there, but also I'm inviting the public in to do it. So we're going to do that one in Manhattan and New York City. March is the date so far. With maybe April. I'm just trying to narrow it down with the place. Okay. So innateworkshops.com, and you can find it. Nerve fibers possess the property of conducting impulses outwards and inward. The amount of impulse force is determined by the rate of transmission, the rate at which action upon the quantity of vibration, and the amount of that movement upon tension. Physiological and pathological activity between peripheral and end organs and their central connection is dependent upon nerve tension. The specific energy of a nerve is due to its anatomical structure, its elasticity, and tension. A nerve pressed upon by a fractured or luxated bone would be stretched were it not for the responsive principle of life, which resists the pressure. The impulsive forces normally conveyed by the nerve is modified by the elastic resistance known as renitency. The result
Penitency.
renitency, excuse me. I don't use that word every day in general conversation. Renitency. Okay. The result, and I know we've looked that up on here before. I'm not going to look it up right now. The result is either too much or not enough function, conditions known as disease. The contraction and expansion of the nervous system has a normal limit known as tone. Now, we just explained tone, okay? The contraction, that's worthy of reading again. The contraction and expansion of the nerve system has a normal limit known as tone. the basis which I founded the science of chiropractic, we got to the meat. Okay, here. Any deviation therefrom is recognized as disease. Tone denotes normal temperature, normal structure, normal tension, normal vibration of the nerves. If you're out of tune, something is off in those areas. I love that. I got to mark it. Okay. Here we go. Tone. Okay. What do you think about that definition of tone? From the man himself, not from somebody else speculating, having their own definitions. He just said it so simply of what we rack our brains over very often, right? Okay, now he gets into auto-suggestion.
Yeah, I think we don't want to go too far from that. We want to the result is either too much or not enough function, conditions known as disease. Again, with something that chiropractors don't pay enough attention to. It's too much or too little. It's like a cash register. Back in the day, if the end of the day, I ran a store a long time ago, and if at the end of the day the cash register is over or under, either way, it's wrong. It's simple. If somebody made a mistake adding up and giving somebody change, it's wrong. The result is either too much or too little function, conditions known as disease. That's the problem. It creates either too much or too little can be a problem. The condition is expansion of the nerve system has a normal limit known as tone. The body works and adapts. It expands and contracts in response to things going on. And if it gets outside of the range of normal of its ability to adapt, innate adapts to forces that come into the body. And if it's outside of that range, that's when problems happen.
This is what gives validity to surface EMG and thermography or the neurocolometer. If it's understimulated or overstimulated, there is some type of malfunction, whichever way it is. What we do is adjust the subluxation, and then the body brings it back to normal, not us, right?
But, and you have to be careful when you say that it gives validity to neurocolometer or EMG, which is today's modern version of that. It's what BJ looked for with that was a pattern of dysfunction, because it can be hot one minute and be not the next. It's the problem. If it's there and persistent and consistent, then there's a problem there. If it doesn't change, the body should be changing and adapting constantly.
There you go. Absolutely. All right. Autosuggestions may be therapeutic, curative, or
You skipped
morbific.
some there, didn't you?
No.
The angle worm is relaxed.
Oh, the angle worm. I haven't talked about worms in here yet. When relaxed, make measure 6 inches.
It's an example. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. Press against. Now, don't make me laugh. I can't read when I'm squinting like that. Press against it, impinge upon it, try to stretch it, and immediately a response of increased tension is observed. It contracts lengthwise, and its diameter is increased. The ability of elastic resistance to any opposing force is an inherent quality of all living matter. Dead material does not propose it. An impingement upon a nerve calls into action two opening forces. The impingement body tends to stretch the nerve, while the inherent principle of self-preservation exerts an activity towards contracting it. So it's the protection of, if someone pulls your arm, your natural reaction is to pull back, right? Is to press it and to keep it into the best that you can against the resistance.
But what you said, the ability of elastic resistance to any opposing force is an inherent quality of a living matter. The body has its ability to resist and adapt.
Yes, exactly. Dead ones don't. Trauma, the cause of disease, increasing or decreasing function. is direct in displacing osseous tissue. Poisons are indirect. They act on nerves, nerves on muscle. Their combined action draw vertebra out of alignment. So that is chemical stress. That's what he's talking about is chemical stresses.
So you've got physical and chemical there.
Yeah. So autosuggestion may be there and back here, may be therapeutical, curvature, curative, or morbific, causing hysteric paralysis, contraction of muscles, impairment of vision, convulsions, sensory disturbances, and psychotic manifestations. A change of thought is restful, but a constant continuation of the same thought using the same nerves causes nerve disturbance and some form of insanity, and yet there is no discernible lesion on the nerve system. So what he's talking about is, are mental issues and how are they caused? And I've seen, people with schizophrenia, many of them get adjusted and stop hearing voices in their head, and they're never pleasant things that they say to them. And so that's been amazing I've seen. But
Well, what he's saying, what if you think what you just read there is trauma, poisons, and autosuggestions is trauma, toxins, and thoughts, or what's
yeah,
become thoughts. Autosuggestions is not thoughts necessarily,
what's
but
put into your
thoughts
brain.
is a misnomer that chiropractors have adapted because they can say three T's and it alliterates. But in reality, what he's saying here is trauma, toxins, and autosuggestion or thoughts, and that's are causes. And he also saying autosuggestion may be therapeutic or damaging. It can be therapeutic or morbific.
Well,
So it could
that
go.
you can cause people to have problems. He's also talking about your thoughts, continuations of the same thoughts, and you see, with that happens. But this goes back to his argument with Carver, right? From what's that called? That he wanted to add autosuggestion into chiropractic. And this is why, this is his explanation why. What is that called again? Is concept therapy,
Mm,
you know, which is very popular right now in chiropractic. The relationship existing between bones and nerves are so nicely adjusted that any one of the 200 bones, more especially those of the vertebral column, cannot be displaced even so little without impinging upon or stretching adjacent nerves. Pressure upon nerves creates an excess of molecular vibration that effects of which, when local, are known as inflammation, when diffused as fever. Nerves are the conveyors of impulses which create functions. An increase of vibration causes an excess of function. Local inflammation or fever, symptoms which are common to most diseases. Now, this is the first time he's using subluxated, and I think maybe so far in this book, I don't know if he said the word subluxation yet.
not sure. I don't think so.
I don't think so. This may be the first one. Subluxated vertebra, disarranged. I got to put a mark at this one, excuse me. Disarranged the costocentral articulation, the juncture of the head of the rib with the vertebra. These projecting surfaces press against the impinge and impinge upon one or more of the four branches of the spinal nerves. The adjuster contains 36 pages from 189 to 225 devoted to the luxations. I can't wait to read that again. We just did that not long ago. Giving the opinions of many authors. Read above, read them, please read them carefully and notice how near they came to getting onto chiropractic, its principles, art, and philosophy. Let me read that all again. Those pages, 189 to 225, devoted to luxations, giving the opinion of many authors. Okay, we know that. Oh, somebody wants to come in. Hold on. It's probably Shargel. And please read them carefully and notice how near they came to getting onto chiropractic in its principles, art, and philosophy.
He's talking about the Chiropractor Adjuster, another book of his.
1910. He's
Yeah,
talking about the
1910 book.
1910 book. Because this one only has 70 something pages. How many? 115 pages. And I mean, it's a small book. So welcome, whoever just joined us. You don't have your name up here. And we just finished page 32. So that was, he's teaching. This is teaching spinal anatomy and nerve function and luxation. And I'm so glad he refers back to the 1910 because it does show that this was written obviously after 1910, because a lot of people say this book is just a collection of things slapped together by his last wife, and they were just his notes. These aren't just his notes. These are his classroom notes to the students, and definitely written after the 1910 book. Well, Alan, we finished that chapter.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff. It's he's gone back. This is the basics. This is the core of him defining and the limits of and the derivation of our principles here. And
Yes.
making it clearly defining pieces of things that later on we've come to understand, and that's why we have to discuss them and clarify them in our own minds as to what he's saying, as we go along. And for those of you who are new or are students, I've been discussing this with other chiropractors for almost 40 years.
Well, Alan, that's what this is all for, and that's why
it's
this
a
is a
constant learning
discussion.
process, and I'm encouraging people to join us that don't. It's
Yeah.
not Haig and me.
I know.
We believe your thoughts.
Alan, we got
Everything
you.
you say is right.
That's where we have to, this is why we do it, and it's been going on a long time. And I'm excited. This is we're going into our 5th year, if you didn't realize that. Or maybe this is our 6th year. Oh my gosh. We started 2018. We're going into 2024. Okay. So we've gone through a lot of books. We're going to finish this book. I am determined to get through this book, Alan. And then we're going to go back to the 33 principles. And then we're going to go to 1910, read more of that, and then take a break on it. You can't do it all in one breath. All right. It's 1,000 something pages. So that's what our plan is next. Look out for it. Okay. We're going to finish. The next chapter is health, disease, life, and death. Okay. It gets meaty here. I got a lot underlined. I've got post-it notes, from this point on. And there's a lot of stuff going on from Dee Dee after these next chapters. Once again, innate adjusting New York City in March, and you're going to know more about that. Alan, do you have something else to say?
As I say, if you don't have the book is available,
it's free
online. Actually, if I think I found a link that I sent to somebody recently a chiropractor that
just
was
send
talking
me an
about joining
email,
us.
HaigJohnDC@gmail. I've sent out like probably 10 copies this a month. It's a free download if you search for it from an archive, because it's over 100 years old.
It's
Which is
actually
awesome.
I think the one I found is from the National Archive, actually the National Library. The in DC here is the National Archives, but it is available if you don't have the book in hand, and it's been reprinted a bunch of times. You can find it online to be able to have it and print out pages for yourself so you can read along and read ahead.
Well, that wraps it up for tonight, everybody. It's a gorgeous night, and it's cold out, and my kids are watching Christmas movies, and I got to go. All right.
Oh, relatively for Florida, huh?
I love you. I appreciate
Are we gonna
next
meet next
Tuesday,
week, the day
8
after
p.m.
Christmas? I may not be available, by the way.
We're not going to be on next week. Okay. We're not going to be on next week, but we'll be on right after that. All right.
Okay.
Love you
My
guys.
son's in town from Houston, from
Nice.
Arizona next week. So